Hi, this is Greg Dorr from Media Life Crisis. Today, for part of our PopGap project of Kung Fu Movies Month during June 2016, we're going to be looking at the three Jackie Chan movies, Police Story, Police Story 2, and Police Story 3, Super Cop. This video is about the first movie in the series, 1985's Police Story. Jackie Chan wrote and directed this movie. It was part of Chan's project in the 80s to bring the Hong Kong Kung Fu movie into the 20th century. Police Story, his 1985 movie, had a contemporary setting, a Hollywood-like plot. He really put a lot of work into coming up with more sophisticated plots, more subtle characters, more interesting and plausible scenarios, and a lot of that works. Police Story has a pretty good plot. As usual, though, the plots are secondary. For the most part, what we're really interested in are the action scenes that he's going to create and the fight choreography within those action scenes, which is Chan's strong suit. And Police Story from 1985 is one of his three best. He's got a handful of movies from the period of 1985 to 1988 where he really perfected his craft, and this is the first of those three movies. There are four scenes in Police Story that make it simply a classic action movie, even if you have to ignore some of the sillier scenes that are peppered throughout the film. Police Story starts out with a sting on a drug cartel who is using a shanty town as a place to hold their drug deals, and it's a fantastic action sequence. It's unlike a lot of Chan's previous action sequences in that it doesn't include a lot of hand-to-hand fighting. But what it does include is an amazing stunt set piece where this poor shanty town full of extremely poor people gets completely decimated in the course of the drug sting. And as usual with Chan stunts, it looks like very little of it was faked, and it is phenomenal to watch. The scene where the shanty is destroyed is followed immediately by an equally amazing scene in which Chan pursues some fleeing villains who have escaped by boarding a city bus. Chan pursues the bus on foot, which involves elements of classic slapstick comedy like what he does here with the umbrella. And then the scene ends with a classic bit of stunt slapstick that is one of the scenes where Chan really sort of earns the comparisons he gets to the greats like Buster Keaton. That's classic Jackie Chan, and it's one of the best action sequences of the 1980s. Part of the plot of Police Story is that Chan's detective is assigned to protect a key witness against the drug cartel that he arrested at the beginning of the movie. And this witness is played by the terrific Bridget Lin, who we're going to see several times during this month's movies. But she doesn't believe she needs this protection. She doesn't believe she's in danger. So Chan hires one of his fellow police officers to masquerade as a killer and put fear into Bridget Lin, which involves a very well done but also slapsticky scene in which this police officer tries to make it look like he wants to kill her, but has to actually avoid killing her. This is another good example of how Chan can blend comedy and action together effectively. It does involve still like a reliance on goofy faces and very broad acting. This ploy by Chan to fool Lin into thinking that she's being attacked backfires when she discovers the identity of the policeman who attacked her beforehand. And then when they really get attacked by the drug cartel's thugs, she doesn't believe that it's a legitimate attack, but another staged attempt to impress her. But what it does for the audience is it results in a fantastic, classic Jackie Chan hand-to-hand combat scene. Now, as usual in Chan's fights, what he does so well is incorporates the practical location of the fight as much as he can into the fight. So here the fight is around these cars, all of the cars get used as defenses and or weapons, at least conduits for attack at some point in the scene. And it's really Chan at his best. A large portion of the Police Story movies concerns Chan's character's relationship with his sweet girlfriend May, played by Maggie Cheung. Poor May is one of the most beleaguered girlfriends in the history of movies. Over the course of the 3 films, Chan subjects her to a series of emotional and psychological abuses that no one should have to deal with. She really has the rawest deal of just about any character in any Jackie Chan movie. Her character has a really interesting progression through the 3 films, and we're going to get into that more when we get to Police Story 2. But for here, I'll just say that Maggie Cheung, as always, is delightful in these movies. Unfortunately for her, it's a pleasure to watch her get so horribly, horribly mistreated by this character of Chan's, who is a great cop, but he is really like a 6-year-old boy in terms of his impulse control, his attitudes towards women, and his general respect for others. One of the great things about Jackie Chan's fight scenes, when he got into this grittier period in the 1980s, is that his fights have such a visceral feeling of pain to them. You can feel every punch, kick, and stunt that he populates his movies with. It's well known that Jackie Chan has broken nearly every bone in his body during the course of his career. He's gotten into near-death injury situations a couple of times, and his movies always involve him getting beaten to a pulp, which is something that you're not going to see in most Jet Li movies, where Jet Li tends to play characters who are mostly untouchable except for maybe one fight scene. In nearly every fight scene in Chan's movies, he gets roundly beaten, is covered in bruises, and has a look of weary pain on his face. The last great scene in Police Story is the finale, which takes place in a shopping mall, where Chan faces down with the drug cartel's thugs, in a scene that seems to involve anything that could break inside the shopping mall. They find a way to break it, smash someone's head into it. It is one of the best fight scenes that's ever been put on film. I dare say that it's Jackie Chan's single greatest achievement in movies. He gets thrown from great heights, people get their faces smashed into glass. It is a spectacle of action filmmaking, and I don't think that we've seen anything of this caliber of visceral, frenetic violence until maybe The Raid 2, which is another one of my favorite martial arts movies. Just because scene after scene, you feel like you're in the fight, even though you're watching it from a safe distance. One thing that it's important to note about Chan's performances in these Police Story movies is that he has upped the intensity of his acting 1,000-fold. And he's really aiming to get rid of sort of the broad comic performances that he had in his earlier kung fu movies that were almost cartoony in nature. So that's Jackie Chan's Police Story from 1985, directed by Jackie Chan. One of his 3 greatest movies, along with Project A Part 2, which we'll get to in a little bit, and Dragons Forever from 1988, which was directed by Sammo Hung. It's really an amazing streak that Chan had there in the 80s. So many great fight scenes. It's too bad these movies aren't better known to Western audiences, because they're very accessible, and the stunt work in it is unlike anything that you've even seen in today's Hollywood movies. Really, really terrific, fantastic stuff. One of the things I like to do after each movie I watch is I add it to my flick chart, which maintains a list of my favorite movies. Here you can see it narrowed down to my favorite movies in the martial arts genre. Now, Police Story is a movie that I already have ranked on my flick chart, so I'm going to click on that and re-rank it. See if my attitude about it has changed. It's already in my top 500, so this may just be a formality, but let's find out what movies it gets matched up against and see how it fares. The first movie it's up again is Salt. That means that Salt is exactly at the midpoint of my flick chart. I have 3,075 movies ranked on there. This one's going to fall somewhere in the 1,500 range. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Police Story. Salt was okay. I had nothing against that movie, but Police Story is an action classic. Up next, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Darby O'Gill is a favorite Disney movie from my childhood. I used to watch it in my school library during the summer when they would have their free movie showings. It's got leprechauns, Sean Connery, and a very bad special effect of a banshee that used to scare the crap out of me. But in this case, Police Story, I think, is heads and shoulders better than Darby O'Gill and the Little People. The Wages of Fear. Now, this is a movie that I watched for last month's PopGap as I was catching up on Cannes Film Festival winners that I had not seen yet, and I really, really liked Wages of Fear. I think that, on the whole, Wages of Fear is a better constructed movie, and I really did love parts of it. I enjoy Police Story more, but it also has parts in it that kind of make me wince when I think about them. But I think on the balance, I'm going to have to give this to Police Story as being the film that I prefer more out of these two. Like, if I had to sit down and choose one to watch, which one would I choose? I think it would definitely be Police Story. Okay, Police Story moved up about 100 spots there with that ranking. So now, how does it rank against Goodfellas, Martin Scorsese's adaptation of the autobiography by Gangster Henry Hill? Goodfellas is a dazzling movie. It's a classic gangster movie. I don't have a fondness in my heart for Goodfellas that many do, but I respect that movie greatly and really enjoy the performances by Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in particular, and I have to vote for Goodfellas on this one. That puts Police Story up against Spike Lee's Malcolm X. Malcolm X, I think, is a troubled movie, but one that is anchored to one of the best acting performances that I've seen. I think that Denzel Washington is absolutely brilliant in that movie. I think I'm going to have to say that Police Story is the better movie of these two. Wow, it jumped another 100 spots. This is a dramatic climb for Police Story. But here it is coming up against one of my favorite action movies from Hong Kong in that roughly the same time period, John Woo's Hard Boiled, which I think is a masterpiece of violence and carnage. As great as Police Story is in its best moments, it does have those other moments that I'm not so fond of. I'm going to vote for Hard Boiled on this one. Pulp Fiction, again, a movie that I don't love as much as the diehard fans of it do, but it is a solid movie with multiple memorable scenes, and one that I'm going to have to vote for in this matchup. Police Story versus Robert Altman's Shortcuts. Shortcuts is the sprawling adaptation of several Raymond Carver short stories that had a really big impact on me when I saw it back in the 90s. And I've seen it once or twice since then. Really, really great, complex movie that is going to beat Police Story here. Slaughterhouse 5 is an adaptation of the Kurt Vonnegut novel, which I really liked quite a bit. It's about Billy Pilgrim, who sort of flashes through time here and there. Complicated, interesting movie. I haven't seen it in probably 25 years, but I'm going to have to say that I think that it has a much greater achievement as a work of art than Police Story does. Verdiana. Now, this is another movie like Wages of Fear that I reviewed last month for my PopGap project of Cannes Film Festival winners. I really, really liked Verdiana, especially the more that I thought about it. Its many layers really started to sink in, and I thought it was a beautiful and complex movie that as much as I like the popcorn appeal of Police Story, I think that Verdiana is going to take this matchup. One of my favorite martial arts movies, The Raid 2 Barandal. Police Story is great. The Raid 2 was just so epic and such a massive improvement over the first one, and surprised me in scene after scene. It's kind of like the best fight scenes in Police Story, but with none of the bad scenes, and it goes on for an extra hour or so, but that doesn't seem to matter. I'm going to pick the Raid 2 here. I think that movie is a masterpiece. Remains of the Day. It's a very fine movie that I love very much, especially the performances by Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson. I'm going to vote for Remains of the Day here. Sorry, martial arts fans. I know this is probably sacrilege for all of you. So Police Story ends up jumping a couple hundred spots to end up at 288. That is going to make it pretty high on my list of martial arts movies. Let's go back and refresh this and take a look at where they end now. We had Police Story 2 right there. Now it's jumped up ahead of Enter the Dragon. I think this is a pretty accurate accounting. Let's look at the detailed view. It comes in at number 5 now, just behind The Raid 2, Crouching Tiger. I think that's accurate as it stands. I think maybe... Boy, I need to rewatch Dragons Forever at some point, because I feel like I liked that a little bit better than Police Story. Oh well, we'll have to do that another day. Police Story ends up at 288 on my flick chart.